First Thursday of the new year, 2024. And of course, we've got world politics right here on Pod TV. And there are even some political books that are out there as well, because there is actually a bookstore if you go to the website, podtv.tv, and all along those lines. And I do know that there are some books with political orientations, just like there are some economic books. And of course, I've got my good friend Jimmy Eats, who's got his book on the bookstore, and Rick Rosner as well, and a number of other books. They're on that location as well. But definitely one of the things that people will be talking about in 2024, as it is in an election year, is politics. There's no doubt about that. Politics is going to be a heavy topic in 2024. There's already things going on, like a number of these trials involving Trump. And of course, there are even some peacekeeping efforts that are going on in some of the places that we were talking about, even in the end of 2023. Because I did see that there was an exchange of prisoners in Ukraine between those folks in Ukraine and Russia, those soldiers, and a prisoner exchange has taken place in that area. And apparently some people have pulled out of some of the troops in Gaza and all along those lines. So definitely we do know that the U.S. politics, but not just the U.S. politics, but also other countries are having their elections as well. I believe Russia is even having some elections, and there are some elections in some of the African nations and other places as well. So politics is going to be a hot topic, and there'll be some folks that'll be trying to frame which way the Democrats are going, which way the Republicans are going, and which way various folks are going in the notion of politics and the political landscape. But I've got some great fellow panelists on with me, some of that have become regulars on this network, and some that were guests first and are now regular panelists as well. So I'm going to bring in my panel and see what they've got on their mind in the world of politics. And along those lines, we've actually got the man that is associated to some with Mensa, and it's definitely associated with being willing to challenge corporations, because he took on some of the big game shows and actually did not have, even though he's a very smart man, apparently the money to win against them and all along those lines. Because
I'm the biggest loser in the history of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It cost me $40,000 to sue those guys. So, but really, this is World Edition, but it should be called Squirrel Edition, because I've been on Twitter for the past couple hours. I'm all coffeeed up. I'm very squirrely because frickin' Trump is squirrely. Trump, gets increasingly crazy. This morning, in a span of half an hour, he put up 31 posts attacking on Truth Social, attacking the woman he raped, E. Jean Carroll. 31 posts. And he gets crazier and crazier. The U.S. has 1,700 active nuclear warheads. This guy should not be in charge of our nuclear arsenal.
Well, we have a guest that has been on before. She's now become a regular panelist. She's actually a fan of Trump, and she may disagree with you about that, because she's actually made some parallels between Mr. Trump and the a historical president, that being Abe Lincoln. So I'll bring in Gretchen Wolford from the heartland of the country, coming to us from Wyoming, where there's lots of folks over there. Even though I understand there may be more cattle than there are people, but she can counter me on that and all along those lines. But that is definitely one of the stereotypes that exists and all in that space. But it's definitely an area that is known for freedom and all along those lines ever since its creation as a state within our beautiful country and all along those lines. But Gretchen, you heard Rick, and I'm going to bring in some of the other panelists as well, but he was saying that apparently Trump is going on a tweeter barrage and all in that space. And I do know that you said some favorable things around Mr. Trump, and I'll bring in another guest that may not be all that favorable to Mr. Trump either in a little bit, but I'd love to hear your response to what Rick said about these tweeter barrages.
Well, what else is new with Donald Trump? Of course, he himself would say he can be his own worst enemy, but he did not rape E. Jean Carroll. That was specific in the verdict. Did he rape her? No, that was a no. So the other things that had to come up in that, it's iffy. I don't believe it. But yeah, Donald Trump he's a fighter, and he will absolutely fight things that aren't true. And I like him for that. Millions of Americans like him for that. And he kind of taught me a little how to stand up for what is not true. I'm all for truth, and I'm so glad to be on.
Glad that you're on. We're going to bring Jim Eade on as well and hear what Jim's got to say about this, because Jim is a man that is about truth. As you can say, he's actually got a show called Change Your Mind, where he gets people to change their mind, because sometimes they may have a view that is not a view that even he agrees with, but sometimes he will try to hear other people's point of view so that they can try to change his mind. And I think I am correct in saying that some of the guests have managed to change their mind, and some of you have stayed fast to what you were believing as they tried to give you their arguments and all along those lines. But I think that as I watched the show, there have been some folks that have persuaded you to at least look at their point of view and maybe even make some changes as well. But I'd love to hear your responses to Gretchen, and then we'll bring on Sasha. And right now, that'll be the five of us. And well, actually, we've got a sixth person. So we'll see what folks have got to say. It's actually Jacoby and all along those lines. But definitely, I'd love to hear your thoughts to what Gretchen said about Mr. Trump. And also, if I'm correct, that some people have actually managed to change your mind.
They won't change my mind about Trump. I'm sorry. But the man is a pathological liar, as Ted Cruz pointed out when he was running against him. But he changed his mind when Trump won. And so, we are capable of changing our minds. But, I'm reading the book Differ We Must by Steve Inskeep, and Trump is no Abraham Lincoln in any comparison that turns my stomach. This is a man that is something that is a danger to our democracy. And he's far from a truth teller. He will say anything to anyone at any time to further his own course of actions, his own wants and desires. It's all about Trump. It's not about the country. He's not a patriot. He's far from it. He's going to destroy our democracy if we allow him to serve another term.
So Gretchen is accurate in saying that Trump was not found liable for rape. According to testimony that the judge in the case found credible, he was found liable for sexual assault because, according to the testimony, he had pushed her into the wall so she was facing away from him and could not tell what she was being penetrated with. And because she could not be tell whether it was his fingers or his genitalia, you need it to be the genitalia for it to be rape. So because she couldn't see what was penetrating her, it was only sexual assault.
And I don't believe it. It's not true. It's on appeal. So we'll see how that goes.
How could you say it's not true? You don't know.
Donald Trump actually stands in the way of the serious destruction of America. And that's the similarities between not only Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump, but also the times in which they governed. So one thing about Abraham Lincoln is, his cringeworthy and more common kind of scatological humor kind of side, he learned that didn't work for him. And so it wasn't in the forefront of when he was in public office. So that's definitely a big difference. Donald Trump was Donald Trump years ago, and he's still the same Donald Trump today.
That's true.
So there are differences and similarities, but there are things that just are not true. And they're political hack jobs to get rid of him, because he is the one that they're so afraid of going up against. I mean, the sitting president in the White House is trying to eliminate his political opponent. That's something that I don't think has ever happened in American politics before. That's something that's very new.
Well, hold on a second. One thing I would actually, and I'm going to bring in Sasha as well, but there was a organization, and I think that Jim is aware of it as well, but the FBI and other government agencies in our government have definitely silenced their political opponents. We can see what they did in the civil rights. We can see what they did in the Red Scare. We can see what they did in a number of times. And there was actually a program, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a program called COINTELPRO. It was around during the 60s. It was actually targeting some of the quote unquote leftist politicians and all along those lines. So if this is a playbook that is going against the right, it is not a new playbook, because it is a playbook that has been used by both parties, I would argue, and all along those lines. But definitely I want to destroy his
political enemies.
And all along those lines, because Sasha is not necessarily a big Trump fan, and he has actually even said that a part of the conversation that he is involved with, which is Russia, that Trump has actually been kind of a Putin puppet, and I'll also bring in Jacoby as well and everything. But what is your thoughts around what Gretchen is saying and all along those lines? Because I do know that you have said about how Trump could even play into the political front, because I think I've heard you say several times that in the last election, he was somewhat of a puppet of Putin, but I don't want to say your words if I'm saying them incorrectly. But definitely any thoughts around what Gretchen is saying?
It's all documented by many people who knew Trump at the time and what's happened. And one of the books which I recommended yesterday was a book by the name American Compromat. And there was very clear which store Trump visited, that he was supposed to buy television sets for his hotel, about 200 sets or so on. And the store was owned by a couple of Russians, obviously with KGB connections. We're talking about 1979. It's quite a long time ago, and it was well documented how many sets he bought. He was attracted by the fact that he has to pay only by the end of the month, no money up front. So the Russian owners of the store, they told him, Donald, so you'll pay us by the 30th of whatever month was, say 30th of October or something. But remember, it's a 30th, it's not 31st. So all money until the last penny must be delivered by you or somebody else to this store, to this very place by 30th. Okay, do you understand that? He said, oh yeah, sure, I understand. And he paid actually by the 30th. What's interesting thing, that there were very special television sets. They were not regular sets. They could show NCTV system, which is a North American system, but also PAL-SICAM system, which is adopted in Europe and Russia. So the people who would stay in this hotel, there were obviously KGB operatives and so on. They wanted to have to watch the European and Russian television. So that pulse, and he sold them at the same price, what would be regular TV. He sold this double standard TVs that they could operate in both systems for the same money. And obviously he was glad to do it, and they kept the contact with him. They saw him as a kind of a dubious character, not trustworthy, but they saw that in the right circumstances, he could be a very valuable asset for KGB, which is exactly what happened. So by 1987, he was already arranged a trip to Moscow, where he was there and he was taken very good care of, and the connection was obviously growing. And by the time that he was, by the year 2000, when he had 6 bankruptcies in Atlantic City, he lost all the money, whatever the father's money or his own money if he ever had, he lost. He was not even zero. He was minus $250,000 by the year 2000. And Russian mafia helped him to get out of this hole, provided that he would be cooperating with them and help them whenever it's needed. So they got him out of this hole. The way it was done was through Deutsche Bank, where they were supplying funds to Deutsche Banks, and Deutsche Banks channeled that money to Trump. And Deutsche Bank was later on sued by U.S. government and paid fine $36 billion. Exactly for that. So from that point on, operating with Russia's mafia money, he was able to get on his feet and buy Mar-a-Lago and so on and many other things. Then he was able to establish wonderful businesses such as Trump University, Trump Airlines. You know what's happened with these wonderful businesses. Whatever he touched in his life, everything went down. Okay.
From 1985 through 2015, according to publicly available documents, Trump lost more money than any other individual American. He's America's worst businessman. Now, the right likes to say that Trump started being attacked when he started running for president. But the deal is Trump is 77 years old, and he's got a long history of being a jackass, and he was made fun of for being a buffoon long before he ever ran for president. But he was a harmless buffoon because he was just this guy who went on Howard Stern and bloviated. The first time he and his father were sued by the Department of Justice for racial discrimination in housing was more than 50 years ago in 1973.
Yeah, along those same lines, I'd love to hear from Gretchen about this and everything. There was an incident that happened about 2 years ago. It was the whole notion of the kind of the storming of the Capitol, and one of the defendants recently, I think it actually was earlier today, was actually given somewhat of a reprieve because they have some health concerns and all along those lines. So they were able to get a reprieve, and they have said that the defendant, Christopher Worrell, has credited the federal judge with saving his life 2 years ago when he freed the Proud Boy from pretrial detention over concerns about his medical treatment and all along those lines. But he also said today that he did not want the Proud Boys or any of the others that took place in that January 6th incident to be deemed as political prisoners, because there's definitely been a conversation as to whether they are political prisoners. So Lamberth, who is a appointee of President Ronald Reagan, says, "I don't want to see you die in prison," but he scolded Worrell during the sentencing for claiming to be a political prisoner, prompting Worrell's attorney, William Shipley, to attribute the belief to a continuous feedback loop among January 6th defendants held at the Washington, D.C. jail. So I guess I'm asking everybody, because Lambert said it's wrong to think he's a political prisoner. It's not okay. The court can't send a message that it was okay. So is he a political prisoner? Because we do know that there are political prisoners in the United States, or is he not a political prisoner in that sense?
Well, before we
Well,
wrap
him
around, Mark,
specifically, there are
before we
lots
wrap
of
around, let's let Jacoby has his first say.
Yeah.
Just a few things. What Rick had pointed out about Trump being bankrupt multiple times, and how his father gave him a ton of money. I mean, that his poor business skills have been well documented. But in politics, that doesn't float. The messaging becomes he's a great businessman, and they never really talk about how many times he's been bankrupt, how he received so much money from his father, but only made a little bit on top of that when he should have actually made a ton on top of it. So his business skill. Let me finish. I'll let you go. No, the facts are the facts. He's a multiple bankrupt individual.
Talk about facts.
No, Gretchen. I know you're a Trump fan, and I know you pull for Trump. You even wrote books about him. But the facts are the facts, and I'm just expressing the facts. On top of that, this is what always gets me about how reliant on, well, it's just a Democrat play to get him out of office, or even in the election. Well, the election was stolen from Trump. So in 2020,
that's well documented.
No, it's not. Well, it is well documented. Gretchen, let me get out the facts because you keep interrupting. So it is very well documented that Trump and his legal team took it to 60 plus judges and lost every case because they did not have any evidence for it to be stolen. No. Every court has looked at it and it's been turned away. The reason you're holding on to it is being a fan you're being a fan. So again, we're talking facts here. All those cases were turned away. Let me finish. So again, if we're talking about just Trump, if the Democrats were so wanting to steal an election, why was it only Trump that was affected? What happened to the other Republican senators and House members who ended up winning a lot of the actual states? They don't matter. So the Democrats said, hey, we're going to take away Trump, but we're going to let the other Republicans go. So the fallacy that it's a Democrat conspiracy against Trump, yet the House of Representatives is actually governed by the GOP, yet the Democrats were so gung-ho on Trump, they let the GOP take over the House. oh, the Democrats were so, oh, why didn't they use their playbook on Mitch McConnell and take over the Senate? It's because there is no playbook like that. This isn't a playbook against Trump. Trump legitimately broke laws. Trump legitimately did wrong. But the problem, he broke laws. Again, the man has 90 cases against Gretchen. Again, facts. Man has 90. Gretchen. Don't interrupt me. I'm not going to interrupt you. Don't interrupt me. I'm not going to interrupt. Gretchen, raise your hand. Gretchen, I had to raise my hand. So please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's keep
I wasn't
civil.
aware.
Let's please keep this civil. So again, the man has 90 cases.
I had to raise my hand.
Yes, and you saw I did, and others have as well. Let's keep civil and let's actually stay on. Why are you interrupting me right now? Why are you interrupting me right now? I didn't interrupt you. So again, the man has 90 plus cases against him. The man has 4 indictments against him. The thing is, these things happened, and to ignore them isn't a Democrat play, because if there was a Democrat play, the other senators, the other House members, the other courts, the other states would have had these same problems. But it's only isolated to Donald Trump, because the man and his administration, the individuals, he has tons in his administration who actually have been found guilty of many, many things. But again, that's my whole point. The man did wrong, but due to politics and messaging, that's not going to be the message.
Jacob, you picked up one very important thing. You just said that even if man is not brilliant at business and lost more money than anybody in history of the United States, he still could be a good politician. So maybe we should look at him as okay, he's a lousy businessman, but great politician. Okay, that great politician was twice impeached. He lost the House, he lost the Senate, he lost the presidency. Everything was there was to lose. He's a pathetical loser in business, in politics, in human relations with girls and women and men. And just how many people are in jails because of Donald Trump? Can you count? Anybody can count how many people concerning the January 6th and many other offenses? And
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear something from you. Okay, defend him. He's a great politician. He's a great businessman. What else?
Concerning the accusations, 91 indictments against him. It's just accusation, and it's politically motivated. Going back to
lawyer, do you understand
what you are
legal matters?
Okay, if it's not a Democrat playbook, it most certainly was, Germany 1930s playbook. Accusation. When you're trying to get rid of your political opponent, how about let the American people decide? How about have an election and eliminate him forever instead of trying to take him out before he has a chance to be elected? And speaking of something that is well documented, something just came out on the 2020 election and the legitimate problems that were never litigated because there was so much censorship and so much squashing of anything that had to do with that. And January 6th, of course, we have political prisoners because the FBI is finding all kinds of people who didn't even go into the Capitol, and they are making sure that they are harassing them enough so that they plead guilty. There's been no insurrection charges anywhere. Nobody's been charged with insurrection, and yet that's the assumption that that's what happened. But there are millions and millions of American people who realize that something was wrong, and it's never been addressed.
One simple
and
question.
Talking about,
okay, enough.
Donald Trump,
what did you do on January 6th? What have you done on January 6th? What did you do during the day?
January 6th was when there was a large protest at the Capitol
It's
to
a
bring
protest.
legitimate concerns about what
What
happened in the
legitimate
2020
concern?
election.
What concerns?
And
Why
Donald
do you
Trump
call
was
them legitimate? What makes them
peacefully
legitimate?
and patriotically
No, no,
as
come
anything.
on. It was
And
a
there
riot.
were-
People
there
were
were
killed.
some-
What are you talking about? It was all well organized. Somebody paid for the buses to bring these idiots to Washington. Come on, it's all
there were
well
lots
organized.
of
Hey.
huge protests.
Hey, I don't want
and
this show
there
to be
was
beat
some
up Gretchen.
violence that got
Yeah,
out
no,
of
no,
hand.
Maybe there's a topic that we can pick that is not so indefensible. And,
Here's
and,
one.
we don't
Okay,
have to
Donald
be just
Trump.
beating on her.
It
But
was
Gretchen,
told-
let's take a step back from this issue because you're clearly in the minority.
What issue?
And
Donald
you're clearly
Trump?
going to get beat up on this show if we keep
I
on this
am,
topic.
and I'm the
Mark,
only
do we
one
have something
for
else we
him
can
and
talk about?
defending him, but
Yeah,
he
well,
did
actually,
not quote
hold on a
Hitler.
second. Hold on a second, Gretchen. One of the things that we can talk about, and it actually is something that Gretchen was talking about earlier, and everything is this notion of accusations and whether accusations should be thrown out and everything. Because as we know, there is a major individual who might even play a role in politics, that being Elon Musk. And one of the things that has come up recently is this notion of some of his employees that had some critical things to say about SpaceX and have faced the consequences of what they did. I think they were actually let go of and all along those lines. So I guess the question I'm asking to folks is how much should we take into consideration when folks are being targeted for whatever reasons they're being targeted, and how much should we pay attention to Elon Musk's role in the elections? Because I did hear that I think some workers of one of his companies, and he does own a number of them, I believe this was SpaceX, that they were critical of Mr. Musk, and then they were released of their job because they were highly critical. And that was a news story that came in recently, and all along those lines. And of course, he hit back at Mark Cuban because there was this whole debate around whether DEI is a good thing or another, because some people say that DEI is just another word for reverse racism. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'd love to hear folks' thoughts about one, Elon Musk's role in the election, if any, and also whether if you as an employee should be able to be critical of your employee and not necessarily get terminated.
Right. So earlier I said Donald Trump was America's worst businessman from 1985 through 2015. But now there's Elon Musk, who a little over a year ago bought Twitter for $44 billion, and it's now worth maybe $15 billion. So in a year, he's lost $29 billion. He's now America's worst businessman. And the whole Twitter thing, turning Twitter into a cesspool of misinformation, shows him to kind of be a fraud and a charlatan. And, when he buys a company, whether he founded it or not, part of his deal is that they have to name him as a founder. He didn't start SpaceX, but part of the deal when he bought it was that they have to say he helped start it. It's weird and crazy, and he doesn't seem to be very astute.
There is one well-known businessman who is now trying to become U.S. president by the name Vivek something Kamasutra.
Ramaswamy.
Ramaswamy. Okay, so he's well known as the biological multi-billionaire, and who is a scientist and businessman and so on. By the way, he is nothing but a fraud, but he's smarter than Trump, because Trump without brain, he's just trying to grab the money wherever he can and rape women and do anything, whatever he's able to do.
But Sasha, that's what I was going at. And that's what I was asking. I'd love to hear Jim's thought about this, and I'll give the actual particulars because it actually came out yesterday, because it was the National Labor Relations Board, SpaceX, and there are some folks that are saying they illegally fired the 8 workers who wrote an open letter laying out their concerns with the management and culture at Elon Musk rocket company and everything. So the NLRB officials alleging a complaint filed Wednesday that SpaceX interrogated workers about the letter and pressured them to not distribute it, according to board spokesperson Kelly Blado, and the letter had directly criticized Musk's behavior on social media. And we know there are a number of corporate people that do stuff on social media. So how much should employees be able to kind of push back against whatever their employers are doing, and that's the question that I was asking. So I'll throw it at Jim, since I know he's in the West Coast where folks are at that are in this tech field and everything. But how much should they get a free pass?
Well, next thing you will find out about Musk is that he raped a few women here and there, and so he will end up in jail sooner or later. That's for sure.
Well,
Jim?
yeah, thanks, Mark. One thing I want to preface my remarks by saying, whenever you bring up Hitler, you've lost the argument. This is well known on the internet, so let's never mention that guy's name again.
Oh, but it was mentioned just the other day when
Gretchen, please, I'm speaking, and it's well known. It's an internet meme. You can't do it. If you do it, you're a loser. So, in any case, to get back to Mark's point,
he did it.
Gretchen, please.
Let Jim make his point.
Don't interrupt me.
I'll defend
Please.
myself when I have a chance.
Yeah, when you do, and I will listen to you as I want you to listen to me. Now, Mark, the point about Musk is I think Rick made really good points about him. Is he takes credit for the ideas that other people have done, and it's because he can buy them. He's ruined Twitter. There's no question about that. And the one thing that I despise about the man is he said it. I want to allow everyone to have free speech, and then he barred journalists that were taking him to account, and he barred anybody that criticizes him. And this is what we're seeing in the SpaceX, and his employees were critical of his approach internally, and he fired them. And so now they're going to the National Relations Board, and when these things happen, you cannot prejudge something to say just because there's an allegation, they're guilty. This is the United States. You're innocent until proved otherwise. However, when you see a lot of smoke, there's usually fire. And when somebody's got a pattern of doing this type of thing, as Musk does, as Trump has, all of these things lead up to the feeling that, well, gosh, if he does it he's done it once, he's done it twice. If we give him a chance, he's going to do it a third time. This is how I feel about Musk. Is whatever you want to say, just because you have money, it doesn't give you any more rights as a citizen than I have, or anyone else has as a citizen. And this hero worship because they have money and they can go send a rocket into space, this doesn't dissuade me from saying, when you're censoring anybody, when you have the power to censor, you're misusing the power. Because what he's proposing, one side of his mouth is free speech, and what he's doing by his actions is censorship. And this must be opposed. Anybody that has the ability to oppose him should. And whether or not you agree with him as far as his business tactics, as far as his business strategy, that's not a fireable offense. There are rules of what you can and cannot fire people by. So I'm not prejudging what's going to happen with the National Relations Board, but Musk is one of those guys who just does things because he thinks he can, and he thinks he can get away with it. And no one's held him to account. And that's what we're missing in this country right now, is holding people to account for their actions.
Exactly.
But speaking of holding people to account for their actions and everything, and I'm actually going to toss this one to Jacoby and everything. One of the arguments going back and forth, and I kind of alluded to it earlier and everything, between two billionaires, ironically, Mark Cuban and Elon Musk, is to the notion of what is DEI. And I have heard people that have used the diversity, equity, and inclusion argument as saying that it is another form of reverse racism.
Yeah, nonsense.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, Jacoby, and what is your answer to folks? Because apparently that's what Elon Musk hit Mark Cuban at, because he was trying to claim that and everything else. Ironically, he is from South Africa, or at least that's where his country of origin is. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
So, so the issue, there's also more issues with Musk due to the fact that right now Musk has so many ties within our government itself due to SpaceX is taking over for NASA for the amount of money they keep cutting from NASA. You have the EVs there, that whole infrastructure is being built by Tesla, which of course Musk owns. The internet is provided by Musk's company to Ukraine. So Musk right now has a lot of ties within the government. And so, yes, what James is saying, he's never going to be held accountable until he's out of that situation. But in terms of DEI, DEI is the same thing that the military uses. It's about diversity and inclusion, because we have found, and this is why the military utilizes that, the fact that you are more effective the more diverse your company is. It is well documented. The problem is that, again, that idea has become the same. It's being demonized the same way the word woke is. It's being demonized the same way other things dealing with race are, because they don't. The term woke, people don't know what that word means, but they utilize that term to cover a broad reach of things that they disagree with, especially when it comes to race, and when it comes to women, and when it comes to LGBTQIA community, that community. It's used painted as a broad brush. With DEI, it's the same thing. Diversity and inclusion is just allowing for individuals of particular races or particular genders to be a part of the power structure. That's all.
To be considered for jobs.
Yeah, that's all it is. So
it's affirmative action.
Again, the Supreme Court just disallowed affirmative action with regard to college admissions.
Yeah, so
that should be out the window because it's been made illegal. But the argument Cuban made today in arguing with Musk is that DEI, when he uses it at Cuban's companies, it's not closing people out, it's finding more good people.
And the crazy part about it, as we talk about DEI, think of how ironic the screen is right now. If you talk about what the individuals attacking DEI want, only 3 people on this screen right now would be allowed to talk.
Well, if you don't suck, you shouldn't be afraid of DEI. DEI advantages, it's kind of a white privilege thing. So I know I think I'm good at certain things. So I don't care if I have to compete with everybody, regardless of gender or race, in these things.
And that's honestly, if you again, DEI within itself is nothing more about grabbing the cream of the crop, everything that people keep talking about, this utopian society that we really want, and we grab the best of this and the best of that. That is honestly what DEI is. I mean,
if you remember that
DEI, arguing against DEI often covers up other problems.
Yeah, if you're saying that only white people are the smartest ones, or as Sasha likes to, I hate to pick on you for this, for Sasha, but that men are better than women at chess and only men are more intelligent than women, it's
not the same thing. Sorry.
That's antithetical to DEI.
Well, let's remember that Fred Trump taught Donald Trump to code certain applicants with a C, and it didn't mean that they were an average applicant. It meant they were colored. So we have run into a systematic problem of discrimination against certain people. And so what DEI is trying to do, pardon me, Gretchen, that's the second time I've had to caution you to stop interrupting me, please. And so the idea here is that we're trying to correct previous behavior. And will there be some problems with that? Yes. And is it something that we're going to have difficulties with? And sometimes both sides will have citing evidence that their side is right. Yes. But these are complicated issues, and the corrective actions that are being taken by DEI is imperative to restore fair and equitable treatment of the average American citizen.
I want to talk about for a second.
Be aware of. The American citizens need to be treated equally. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So I want to talk about it with regard to elite colleges. Cornell lets in the most students of any Ivy League university. Every year they let in 5,000 students. But this last year they turned away 63,000 applicants, probably at least 40,000 of whom were perfectly qualified to go there. It's even worse at Harvard, Princeton, Yale, where 3% of applicants get in out of tens of thousands of perfectly qualified applicants. But because those colleges let in so few people, everybody, regardless of race or gender, gets screwed over. It's a crapshoot. It makes applicants to those colleges crazy. They apply to 15 colleges. Getting into college is a huge mess if you want to go to one of these exclusive things, regardless of race and gender.
Hey, but Rick, along those same lines, there is a type of school, and I'd love to hear definitely Gretchen, maybe even Kim's thoughts about this, but there is a type of school that became very popular throughout the country and everything. And it's not just vocational schools, but we know that there are a number of schools. So, for example, Texas A&M, over here in North Carolina, we have North Carolina A&T. State was seen as an agricultural school, and there are a number of schools that were agricultural, but I don't know necessarily that they taught that much about the business side of agriculture and all along those lines. So are those schools still relevant in the year 2024? And should we have more of those, or is there a rural and urban divide as well? Because what Jacoby was just talking about, if we look at this panel, there are a few of us that grew up in rural towns, myself included, and I'm thinking Gretchen because she's in Wyoming, and there are some of you that grew up in urban environments and all along those lines. So is there a bias that exists between the urban and rural divide as well? And this is
not if they have a huge student body. State schools are still kind of affordable. Schools, half of the students in universities are taking STEM courses, math and science, which we need to compete against, to stop China from kicking our ass and India from kicking our ass when India gets its crap together. They have China and India combined have 8 times our population. They have an emphasis on education. We need the universities to have an educated populace to keep up with these behemoth countries who are going to kick our butts.
But that's what I'm asking. Are they training? And I don't know.
Yeah, because like we hear a ton about like
the modern day version and everything. Because like I said, even those folks that I know that are at North Carolina A&T and at Texas A&M and some of the other A&M kind of schools, and I don't know enough of them, maybe Gretchen knows others, are they actually training them on the business side of the agriculture business? Because, you know, the complaint around the agriculture business is that it is very big farm corporate driven. The small farmer, whether they be white or black, has been pushing out of their job and everything. And even I know me and Jacoby have talked about the decline of black farmers and all along those lines. So I'm asking the question: are they actually being trained?
Yes, I would. Now I don't know, but I would argue yes that you have to be very tech savvy to even be a farmer today.
That's true, but Gretchen's got her hand up, Rick.
Sorry.
You know, as farmers in Wyoming, and knowing my husband and the family in which he came from, this has absolutely everything to do what is wrong with the need for technical schools, the need for training in any profession. Yes, there are degrees in agriculture, there are degrees in business ag, and they are in parts of the country that are not urban, obviously, because you don't farm in urban areas. But the University of Wyoming is our only university. It has an excellent business school. It has, but one thing about farming, and anyone getting into a university does not mean success in your life. There are expectations that your family has taught you when you grow up. But my husband learned farming from his father. And it's people can certainly jump into farming. They can learn about it. They can apprentice with someone. That's what's needed. And it doesn't matter what field you are in. We need more schools that are trade schools and that are technical schools and that are even in the high school level, not just leading everyone to, getting into college is going to be the be all and the end all. I do appreciate colleges that don't use race or gender as a priority, but use the content of their character and their abilities, how they had worked in high school, so DEI is just another form of affirmative action as far as I can tell. It simply makes sure that something else besides ability or merit is what is going to get them in to the school. But we do need more that teach skills and not just getting a college degree. But yeah, farming is one of those areas. It is hard to jump into from just an education. You kind of need to be raised in it. And that's why it seems to be in the decline. Family farms, which is what ours is. So,
well, what you need to do is also increase the how much people are making for what they're doing. Farmers just were not generating enough revenue to even take care of their families, let alone put them through an education. So you can get all the tech schools and education that you want, but until you have jobs in this country, in the plentiful bounty, so that when people graduate, there are jobs to go to, as well as high paying jobs or jobs that will at least pay you above $7.50 an hour. You're not going to benefit anyone. You're just wasting and spending a lot of money. And I'm not against education. I sit on several boards of advisors in, extended education, and I have always promoted it. I'm all about it. But the problem we have now is a lot of people have invested a lot of money because education costs too much. And the kids are graduating with a debt way up here and no means to pay it off and no good jobs to pay it off. And I know this for a fact because I still communicate with the students after they graduate. So we've got a problem in this country, and it's not providing enough jobs within our own country. They outsourced all our jobs to countries, to the students that we gave free education to when they came over here as foreign students. But there's not enough jobs. There's not enough good paying jobs, and especially in agriculture. Agriculture is one of those areas that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot over. We need to invest more in it, because if you can't feed yourself, somebody's going to be holding that over our head one day. They already are. China owns all of our pork right now.
Kim, you're raising multiple issues here, and it's a complicated subject that we started with, and I am in agreement with much of what you've said. But since the Biden administration started, the unemployment has gone to record lows, 50-year types of low unemployment rates. Wages have gone up. Jobs are plentiful. The economy is doing extremely well. We hear in people saying that the economy is doing bad, but I'm doing well. There's a disconnect between what people are reporting about what they think is going on in the country and what they're personally experiencing. The numbers are very clear. Inflation is on the way down, and inflation was caused by the COVID pandemic. And so it was not caused by an overheated economy. So what we're seeing now is employment going up, and people getting good jobs, being able to quit the job they don't like and finding another job. All of these things are very positive. But my wife grew up in Hollister, which is a rural agricultural city in California. California produces most of the agriculture in the country. And so these people that I've grown up, I didn't grow up with, but when I married into this, I've learned a lot about how they think and why they think the way they do. And this farming issue is a very complicated one, because a lot of it has been taken over by mega corporations. And so it's hard and harder.
Or China.
Mega corporations, whoever owns them. And it's also a problem that they have in starting a family farm in general, because what the economics are working against them. And if they are successful, they are acquired. So this is a problem that's throughout the country. It's specifically hitting California extremely hard. And so people that grew up as family farmers, my in-laws family was a pear farmer. And so what they were able to do, it was sell and get out and get into other things. But this is a pattern that's repeated itself throughout American history. And what is happening now cannot be attributed to any one cause. It's a very complicated series of causes that are taking effect and hitting the family farmers. But what I really appreciate is that it's not just the college that have to change the way they teach, but it's our K through 12 as well, because it isn't going to college that's going to guarantee you a job and a well-paying job anymore. You know, it's being able to have a trade, being able to provide a service that is needed in this country, and doing all of those things are going to be able to give people the ability to live lives of quiet, gentle happiness, the ability to provide their own.
I want to just comment on one thing that James said that I find kind of, don't take this wrong, James, but it's just so humorous to me right now, because you said you're doing great right now in this economy. This is not hurting you, and you don't understand why so many people are having problems.
I didn't say me.
But when we know when interest rates go up or down, it benefits one or the other. And I'm listening to a lot of people who it hurts. And then over here, I'm listening to a lot of people who is like, wow, this is the best I've ever had. I love this economy. It's the greatest. And then I'm watching other people suffer. They're losing their jobs, the housing. They want to
there always be people who are suffering. I'm talking about the numbers. They're facts, Kim. You can't argue with the facts.
So, and I agree that unemployment is taken from some very sketchy means, and I've questioned this in
right now. Inflation is
that have always been used.
I agree that there are another one screaming. There's a lot of jobs.
Hold on a second.
But they're not high-paying jobs.
Yes, the wages are going up, Kim. That's my point.
We need more high-paying jobs.
Hold on a second. Yeah.
I think Rick's had his hand up.
Because I think
before we move on,
Toby was actually first.
No, actually, Rick was first, and we're on the same.
We're actually on the same time.
Yeah, it's Rick.
Before we move on, I want to talk about monopoly pressure crushing ranchers. 4 huge slaughterhouse meat packing corporations control almost all the meat packing across the nation. They set the price for cattle, and that price makes it almost impossible for small ranchers to raise cattle unless they have a side hustle. My family for decades has gone to a dude ranch. The only way they can support their cattle operation is what's that?
We had a really good cattle year. Prices are high for beef, and that helps us as ranchers. It doesn't happen every year, but it was a good year this year for cattle.
Yeah, but that's not
prices are very, very high.
You can't generalize from an N of one. Rick's point is well taken. The monopolies are putting pressure on families everywhere. And whether or not your family is doing well, it doesn't matter. You got to look at a general picture.
That's what I'm saying. You have to look at the overall of who it's impacting, because when they adjust the interest rates up or down, when it goes up, it benefits the people over here, and it doesn't benefit the people over here.
Inflation is a bad thing for the economy in general.
There's never been
so we just have to talk about generalities.
Jim, I still
talk about that on economic money. It's actually Toby's turn. It's Toby's turn.
Toby had his hand up.
Go.
Then
you're on mute.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Just to point out what Rick is talking about, what Jim is talking about in terms of how the corporations are taking over the big farms, that's a fact. That is something that is actually happening. And that's pushing out a lot of the smaller places. If you look at the way when Walmart itself comes into small towns and pushes out the mom and pop stores, that's the same way the corporations are taking over a lot of these farms and buying up a lot of this land. And one thing we keep reaching back on, another point that I wanted to point out, inflation. We keep talking about inflation. Inflation isn't just a U.S. thing. And that's the problem, is the messaging. It's a global thing. Currently, the U.S. has the lowest inflation across the globe. It doesn't matter how much you say how high it is, Gretchen. It is the lowest amongst all the nations right now. You know who has the highest in the actual states? Florida. That's a Republican-led state. So please stop doing this. Honestly, the way it is that inflation, yes, we all agree it's high, but it's a global thing. But sitting here saying that it's just a U.S. thing to put it on one politician or another is wrong. It's coming down. Also, all economists right now are saying that by every economic measure, the economy is in good shape. The problem that people say that it is not in good shape is because of, again, the messaging. When we treat our electorate as ignorant and keep pumping out ignorant information and saying, well, the inflation is so high, you know, what caused it? Why do we have the lowest? And then when we say, unemployment used to be the biggest key factor to say the economy is going so well. Well, you know, we have the lowest unemployment right now in our history. We have the lowest unemployment. Our stock market, we have the lowest. The GDP growth last year was some of the highest in our history.
What's going on right now?
Every
from the COVID
measure. And then on top of that, when people used to say, well, the stock market is record breaking. Well, you know, the stock market is higher now than it was in the past. So again, by every economic measure that is taken and used, economists say the economy is doing well. And we're set up for a soft landing, which everybody in 2021 said that we were going to go into a recession. We did not. We avoided it based on the actual numbers and everything used to calculate that. So again, if we're going to one of the things that we fall into a habit of is getting into these political back and forth and not really looking at the actual economy and being honest about these things. As we had that one show way back when, I am going to rely on honesty more so than anything this whole year. And that's my goal. And so in all honesty, based on the economists, and we can all look it up, based on inflation, we can all look it up. Based on all these factors, the economy is doing well. Based on farms, the farmlands, corporations are taking over. Education, we talked about education. Yes, K through 12 has to change. K through 12 has to include coding and a whole bunch of other things because our future economy.
Financial literacy. That's why we started this network.
California, I just signed a petition. Sorry.
AI can be used to help with financial literacy. And the crazy part is if you can't understand AI and you cannot do the coding on your phone, which is being hacked at this moment, I'm sorry, you just lost out no matter what financial literacy programming you have. So reading, writing, math, if you can't do math, you can't do financial literacy.
That's
you can't do reading. You can't understand the actual measures you're signing up for. There's just a lot of stuff that we have to fix K through 12 for the future and not stop planning for the past.
But there are habits we can teach for better financial literacy. And yes, Sasha, I think you're
I would like to mention something. What Jim probably should have said is about corporate earnings. The earnings are exceeding anything that you've ever seen in your life. They're record-breaking earnings. A lot of companies are paying dividends or increasing dividends, buying back their stock, and just wait until maybe not in March, but later this year for sure, the interest rates will start going lower. And with that, the stock market will just explode. And anybody who can have whatever shares you want to buy, it's almost becoming irrelevant. Some people believe that I'm a good stock picker. I don't think so. Today, you can buy almost any stock and it will go higher. With that, I would like to mention that somebody says something about Florida as a Republican state. Florida is a place where people are going to die. The last trip of your life will be to Florida, and that's where you're going to die. Okay, so that's all about it. It's a Republican state, and it will remain a Republican state. There's a lot of cemetery, and a lot of people are on their way to
not just woke that dies in Florida.
Now, Gretchen, you mentioned so many times about Hitler issue or so on. I think Hitler was German, was he?
You
and-
know, I was slapped down for saying Hitler,
Oh,
but then I
no,
would like
that's
to
okay.
respond
You can say a couple of
for
times.
something that was that happened the other day.
Okay.
Where it was said that Donald Trump quoted Hitler, and that's just not true.
Wow.
When he said
It's
poisoning the
not.
blood of America,
I'll tell
wasn't
you, it's
quoting
when you
Hitler. It
think
had
when
nothing to
Donald-
do. The
It is.
fentanyl coming across
Okay.
the border is poisoning the blood of
Oh.
America, and I
Fantastic.
actually agree
So
with that.
Trump,
Just
okay, I
because
will
it's
tell
the
you.
term poisoning
Whenever you
blood
use a
does not mean he's
terminology
quoting
of
Hitler.
Hitler, you
It's in
lost
Mein Kampf.
You want
argument.
to,
Jim
you want to
already
be
explained
truthful,
it to
don't
you.
you? You
It's
just
in Mein
said
Kampf.
your
Now
top
I want
Have
to
you
priority
read
is
Mein
to be
Kampf? That's what he
truthful.
said.
Whenever you say
So
Trump,
that
you're
was a
also losing
political
your argument.
Democrat
Remember
playbook
a couple
thing.
things.
So he
Trump
did not quote Hitler.
originated
Mein
from
Kampf is in it.
Germany.
Look it up.
So yeah, he
So
didn't
before
quote
we go
Hitler.
on to Hitler, I just want to mention I was very excited
Plus, it's
outside a
muted now. I
grocery
don't know if
store.
it's intentional.
Outside a grocery store, I got to sign a petition to get a proposition for the California voters to have a mandatory semester of financial literacy before you can graduate from high school, which is, if that gets on the books, that's freaking great. And I'd also say that the good year for ranching is probably partially due to inflation. That the meat packers probably decided we can jack up our prices and pay a little bit more to the ranchers.
You know,
Actually,
interesting
it's
thing.
because
I
the
found
numbers
about
of cattle
ranchers'
are down.
One
prices.
at a time.
Because of
That's
drought.
Okay, hold on.
That's go ahead, and then Gretchen.
10 seconds. I found why ranchers' prices on cattle actually went considerably higher, because when I just a couple of days ago ordered all-inclusive holidays, and I figured out that there's a nice steakhouse, I understood why the prices for all-inclusive went so much higher because of this cattle, because of this. So now I understand that now I had to overpay probably $700 per person.
It actually is the economic rule that supply and demand. It's there had been years of drought in various places. When there is drought, farmers cannot feed their cattle, so they sell off numbers. So numbers were down, and that actually affects the next year, and prices went up. Yeah, inflation. One thing about the economy is, why don't we feel? Because inflation is still so incredibly high, and lots of people are hurting.
It's not high.
No,
When
it
you can
isn't.
only buy half.
No,
the
it isn't.
groceries box.
It's
I
not.
want to point
That's
out
absolutely
something
wrong.
really, really interesting that I don't think anyone paid attention to during all of this food price rising. You know, about a couple months ago, remember when chicken prices went up or the egg prices went up really, really high? Remember?
Yeah.
And they said it was due to some disease, but it wasn't. I talked
No,
to a
it
few
actually
people.
was, but it doesn't take long.
If
for
that were the
chickens to lay eggs.
case, if
Gretchen,
that were
please.
the case, because I challenged the world on this, and I watched it. If that were the case, why didn't the cost of chicken go up with the cost of the eggs during that inflation time? Egg prices have gone back down to what I consider a decent price now. But I thought that was ridiculous that nobody, because they said, oh, this disease. Well, okay, so the eggs are bad. So now we're not going to have chickens. So, the price of chicken will go up, but the price of chicken never went up. The price of cattle went up to here, and the price of chicken kind of stayed, maybe went up a little bit, but it
doesn't take long to raise
eggs who went like this,
It doesn't take long to raise a chicken, so egg prices are not
Toby's got
going to
his hand up. Gretchen, please.
I'm just saying the chicken prices should have gone up too if you look at supply and demand, and
But
that didn't happen.
different
Please,
chickens,
guys,
I think.
let's do it.
You gotta have chickens.
Please.
Well,
You gotta
it's
have-
been an hour. Thank you so much. I need to go.
Okay, Gretchen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
joining us. And it's 6:00. It's at the top of the hour. And I thank everyone for joining us. And we will be back next Tuesday with more conversations on this topic, because it sounds like we got a lot of problems here and we need to get them fixed. And this panel talk is real. It's true, and it's from the gut. We try to go out and get the facts. And don't forget to go out and buy something from Pod TV Store, because that's how we're paying for all of this. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and we got great books of everyone here on our store. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ken.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're still here. Okay.
Hey!
It's not going anywhere. Hold on, I got it.